All righty. Says we are live. I assume we are. How are you, Grumps? You doing all right today?
Yep, I'm alive.
Oh, you're alive. You see something at the bottom of the screen says use banners to summarize your talking points? Does it say that on
Yeah,
your
yep.
end?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't understand why it's there, but like I said, we are new at this. So we're trying to figure this stuff out as we go. There we go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. If this is your first time here with us, this is our very first podcast, and we have no idea what we're doing, but we're learning as we go. And I want to welcome you to the first podcast of the Graybeards and Gasoline. We've discussed doing this for several months now, and just life has gotten in the way, and we haven't been able to get to it. So we are we're here for the first time. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. We recently surpassed the 3,000 subscriber mark and 775,000 views on the channel. Pretty proud of that. Been going since sometime in May of 2014. My name is Brian, uh, aka I'm also known as Big Daddy. That is my granddaddy name. And I'm just going to give you a 30,000-foot view flyover of my career as a mechanic. So I wrote some things down so that I wouldn't get confused. I grew up with a mechanic father who is here with me on the podcast, Grumps. As a youngster and into my teen years, he began showing me things, tearing down starters and alternators, and began disassembling engines. Um, at about 18, I started with the FedEx Corporation, and I was working at the airport, working with loading and unloading of the aircraft. I learned all the equipment used to support them. About 6 years into my time with FedEx, I had decided to return to trade school and become a diesel mechanic with the goal of returning to FedEx in vehicle maintenance um, uh, later on. And I did end up leaving FedEx in 1997 to begin building my mechanical experience. I actually worked in the yacht industry on various marine diesel engines for a while. Moved on and began to work on air cooled diesel engines. And then later on, I landed into a large truck dealership shop working on Freightliners. I completed an apprenticeship program with them and was about 3 years with the heavy trucks, learning the engines, transmissions, drivetrains, and all that stuff. And I got recruited away by a fellow employee who had moved on, and he went to work for the Alabama State Docks, where I went to work on heavy equipment. It was a pretty good job, and I worked with them. I don't know, along about 2 years, but it was quite nasty. It required me to work in the coal handling facility, and so for my long-term health, I was kind of concerned. Um, and I finally had an opportunity to interview and come back with FedEx, and um, got in a position as a senior global vehicle technician, as they call it, and I was able to move back to FedEx. It meant I moved my whole family from Alabama into Mississippi. And for the last 19 years, that's where I have been up until September the 30th of this year. Um, that is another story. That is another topic altogether. And it is a video that is coming soon to a channel near you. Um, I do have another position with another fleet, and fortunately and glad to say that that is a much less stressful job. And I've been there approximately 2.5 weeks and have really been enjoying it. So that is my 30,000-foot flyover. As I said, this is Grumps. His name is Larry, but all the grandkids call him Grumps. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a quick flyover of who you are and what you did in your career?
Yeah, like he said, I'm Larry, aka Grumps. The reason I'm aka Grumps is my oldest grandson. When he was learning to talk, he couldn't say. He had trouble saying Gramps. That's what I wanted him to call me was Gramps, but he could say Grumps. So he called me Grumps. And then when the other two come along, they took up the mantle, and to them, I'm known as Grumps. So, uh, and my wife might tell you there's some other reasons for the word Grumps, but I don't know. Anyway, I
Ah,
started in about 1973 working in automobile. I had been working in the shipyard in Mississippi, built as a ship fitter, and opportunity came along to go in a dealership as an apprentice, which I was already fixing my own vehicles. But so I went to work at a Pontiac dealership, and then in the small town we were in, uh, at that time, I worked about every dealership in town. Wound up uh, the Toyota, the Pontiac dealership got Toyotas as a line of cars, and nobody wanted to work on them. And so I said, I'll learn how to work on them, because when you look at a head on a four-cylinder Toyota versus the heads on a 400 Pontiac engine, they weighed about a third as much. But I could pick that up with no problem.
exactly.
So I said, I'll let somebody else work on those big old heavy engines. And anyway, I worked at that dealership in Mississippi for a number of years, 3 or 4 years. Then had the opportunity to go to Alabama and work in a strictly Toyota dealership. I stayed there to about 1984, 85, somewhere in there, and got pretty good at working on Toyotas. Back then, there were much, a lot less computer driven, basically mechanical. Did Had a good time working on them there, and then I got an opportunity to start my own business, and I did that for a year. It was hard to keep people working for you that you could depend on, and so I closed my shop up after about a year. Went back to the Toyota dealership. Had an opportunity come up that I could work at FedEx uh, fleet
Hmm.
for part time. I'd go to work at around 3 in the morning, work at FedEx from 3 to 7, and leave there and go to work at the Toyota dealership. And I did that for about 3 years. And then I got a opportunity to interview for a FedEx position in Florida, and got the job, and I stayed there for 19 years. And got time to retire, and I retired in 2011. But I've kept up. I got a friend that's got his own shop, and I work pretty close with him. I do a lot of uh, look up a lot of information for him. So I stayed in touch with cars. Haven't worked on them so much with my hands. I've tried to keep up with it with my brain, so I don't forget everything I once knew. But that's me. So
Well, yeah. Yeah, guys, he calls me all the time and asks me about this new technology stuff and says, "Hey, have you seen so and so?" So he stays in the game and he does work on his own car some. You've seen a couple videos where we did a few things on his car when he's up here. I think it was Christmas about it's 2 or 3 years ago. He noticed that he was on the way up. Car was sitting there idling and he hopped out. He could hear the timing belt flopping. So while he was here over Christmas break, he was out here in the garage and putting a new timing belt on his car. So he does keep working and staying in the game. One of the things that we had talked about offline, he and I together, is we have some facts and myths, and I'll bring that up and we can talk about it. Some common facts and myths. and let's go back to the first slide. Let's see. Come on. My Wi-Fi connection is working a little slow. I think I'm working it with live. And she goes. She's coming. She's about to get there. And one of the first myths, and I hear this pretty regular. Often hear people say, "I'll only run premium gas." That's another myth that we can get into sometime. But basically, this first myth was, and I'll just read them. Depending on where you live, odds are you usually fill up at a big time gas stations, Chevron or Shell. However, big name oil gas stations aren't the only options out there. And for some reason, smaller gas stations are often associated with harmful gasoline. The truth is that small gasoline station is probably getting their gas from the same plants as the big guys. And I'll just stop right there and tell you, yes, that is indeed how it works. Several years ago, one of the companies that I worked for, we had to supply equipment to them, and I would drop off pumps and such to them. And I looked up, and we had a local gas station company, a smaller station company, and it was Pride. And it was Pride Gas. Well, I was at a Chevron gas refinery. Well, the Pride gas tanker was coming out of a Chevron plant. So, there's only so many refineries. So you're not, they're not manufacturing cheap gas over here and good gas over here. They're coming out of the same refinery. Um, the only difference is the amount of additives that's put into their gas, and that is correct. So slide over here to this next slide. Big name gas stations usually put more additives in their gas, and there's probably absolutely nothing wrong with the smaller gas station. The only issue with gas quality arises when tanks aren't properly maintained, and this could easily occur at one of the big gas stations. And yes, that is true. One of the things I will say about that, they most of the tanks in the ground now, and probably all the tanks now, the EPA has made them take steel tanks out of the ground and put in polypropylene tanks, plastic tanks, so that you don't have the rust, you don't have to worry about leaks as much. And what's the other thing? Oh, one of the other things I was going to mention is, have you ever watched a tanker driver when he pulls up? One of the first things he does is pull that big stick out, puts water test paste on it, and he sticks the tank. Have you ever noticed that, Gramps, when they come, that they test the
Yeah.
tank so that the station can't come back on them and say, "Hey, you dumped a load of water in my tank"? Because if
Well,
the
for
station,
years,
go ahead.
I was going to say for years, FedEx had their own in-ground tanks,
Hmm.
and the people that would fuel up their vehicles, they always did what you said. They tested for water to make sure they wasn't putting any gas on top of water. It had to
Hmm.
be pumped. It had to be pumped out before they would dump. But
Exactly.
one of the things they did do was the drivers would come in, fill up their tanks, and overfill their tank, and run it out on the ground. Well, EPA came in and did a soil sample, and they found there was gas in the soil.
Hmm.
So they had to bust the concrete up, get rid of all the dirt that was contaminated, and it was about a pickup truckload what they pulled out of there. Then they had to repatch it, the whole asphalt and all that stuff, concrete, and that happened about 2 or 3 times at the FedEx I worked at, and that's when they took them out. They finally decided we can't keep spending $10,000 to get a pickup truck load of dirt disposed of, and so they finally did away with it. And that was one of the hazards that service stations face is people overfilling their tanks, running out on the ground. Then it's possible for the gas station to get dinged by the EPA for my mistake if I go there and do that. And I really don't know
Yeah.
how they get around that, but that might have been a
Well,
little
that
off
it.
topic.
Well, we went a little off topic, but it's still relevant. The But one of the things I was going to say was about the tankers. The guys that come in there, if you have fixed tank and you have more than the acceptable amount of water, which is usually is like an inch or so of water, they still will still dump the tank. But if you have a measurable amount of water, they will not dump that tanker, and they'll tell you got to get it pumped out, like Gramp said. Let's check out this next myth and facts. And Gramps will be able to talk to this when we get done, because this used to be very true. This is a pretty popular myth, and even a lot of people that have worked in mechanic shops their entire lives will tell you that laying a battery on concrete will cause it to lose its charge. As it turns out, the myth actually has some basis in facts, or at least it used to, before battery casings were constructed in hard casings used today. It wasn't uncommon for concrete or damp floor to cause a battery to lose its power. However, that simply isn't the case today, and concrete doesn't negatively affect car batteries in any way. If your battery does lose charge while sitting on concrete, and it's probably just been sitting out for too long without being, and I'll just say without being topped off charged. So, I'll relate my little portion of the story. I remember working with Gramps probably sometime in the 80s, and I had charged a battery and then I had set it on the concrete. And he said, "No, get that battery and set it on that block of wood." I'm like, "What's that for?" He said, "Because if you set it on the ground, it'll discharge." You probably don't remember that. That was when we were working at the junkyard sometime in the 80s. Um, so, what can you tell us about batteries discharging?
Well,
Anybody?
the early on batteries, early on batteries that did that, where the cases were made out of rubber, and you set it on the floor get damp, it could have a detrimental effect on the battery, causing it to discharge because of if it gets damp. You know how on top of the batteries, how they used to be so bad about getting dirty and have a parasitic draw from one side of the battery to the other.
A
It was the
can and
same.
a
It was the same thing, except it was doing it through the case. It's a parasitic draw because of weather conditions. Because a
and
lot of the go ahead.
I was going to say, and I have developed a habit through the years of I take a shop rag and spray it with some brake clean or something, and I clean the top of a battery, and it came from that discharge, between the posts because of the top getting dirty. And they may have fixed some of that, and it may not be the case today. But those habits you develop as a mechanic. People see me wiping. What are you doing? Why are you wiping the top of that battery? Well, trying to eliminate a parasitic draw, and habits that you start. So
Well, it's real easy to check if you see the top of the battery real dirty. You just hook a voltmeter up to the negative side, and then take the positive lead on the voltmeter and go across the top of the battery, and you can see if there's a draw there, if there's a drain.
yeah,
If
right.
it's
You can
dirty
check.
enough, and you get like what we've been having the last few days, a real heavy dew, it's still possible for it to happen. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen as often because of most batteries nowadays are sealed, and it used to be the ones that had the screw-in tops where you could check your water level. It would bubble out, or the acid would bubble out in minute amounts as you're driving, and it would coat the top of the battery, and then dirt would get on top of it, and that's what would cause a parasitic draw.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm still, like I said, I'm still wiping them down, even though there's probably no need to. But you know, it's just a,
Well,
like I said,
it's
habit
better
that
to
you
keep it
start and you
clean.
just keep doing it.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like I
for
said,
sure.
it's a good idea to clean
Well, let's
it.
move
It's
into some
still
modern
battery.
stuff.
Did
Yeah.
you know? Let me ask
Well,
you this before we run off. We could talk about it, batteries all day long, but
no, that's a
some of
fact.
the first batteries were actually made out of glass. They didn't use them in cars so much, but they had them in like where the telegraph, telephone had battery banks, and the battery banks were
Okay.
made out of glass, thick glass, and they could take them
Really?
apart. Yeah, and they could rebuild, take them down every few years, change out all the plates, put new acid in it, and they rebuilt the batteries on site. Well, that's what I've read. That's from Google.
And Google is your friend. All right. Well, we're going to move into some more modern stuff here. Um, with the over the last few years, we've developed these start-stop systems, and some people think, that they cause you to use more gas and to drain your batteries. A lot of people absolutely hate start-stop systems. That's, I'm one of those. Uh, so it's no surprise they're associated with a few myths, which I don't believe in any of the myths. I just don't particularly care for them. These usually go so little something like start stop system use more gas, they destroy starters, they drain juice out of a car's battery. Um, and we're here to tell you that start stop systems, while annoying, actually result in more fuel efficiency. In addition, starters on these cars are usually fine since engineers make sure to beef them up, which they are. These systems can take a toll on normal batteries, but most cars that utilize the start stop system usually come with a special battery, usually an AGM or some kind of a special battery that's designed and require that you buy the same type of battery when it comes time for replacement. And that is true. Um, I don't particularly care for the start stop system. And with the Toyota Highlander that we have, the way I avoid it is if you just don't press the brake as you're coming to stop and you don't press it just a little bit further, it'll cut off. But if you're gentle on the brakes and just gently roll to a stop, it doesn't activate it. Where we are, temperatures frequently in the summer get over 100 degrees. So when it cuts off, your compressor stops turning, and it doesn't take long when it's over 100 degrees outside for the inside of the vehicle to begin to heat up. Um, I can see that there are some advantages to it. It does lower if you're not putting something out the tailpipe, you're not putting out emissions, you're not burning gas, so you're saving gas, lowering emissions. I get it, but for me personally, I I don't care for those. I don't care for it. So have you ever driven any of those cramps? I know you've rented some cars here in the past few years ago, in the recent years.
No, I hadn't. Everything I rented was a typical starting system. It didn't have that stop and go.
Mm,
If it is, it was turned off.
it
You
wasn't
know.
activated. Wasn't
Yeah.
activated. Well,
But
like I said,
I
it's
don't think that I don't think the uh, rental companies would, if they could get away with not spending that extra money to have it on the car, that they would get them without them. You know, they wouldn't want that
uh,
on a car. More expense.
well, and because my understanding is that some of these starters, where a regular automotive starter might be, in the $200 range, some of these that are beefed up, $500-600. Um, that's a lot. It's a pretty good expense. So I could see why they wouldn't want to do that. Uh, let's look at our next slide here. I think I went too far. There we go. We got a little theme going here on batteries. A car battery lasts upwards of 5 years. Nope. This is kind of a surprising fact, but it's not surprising to me because I'm in the industry. I see about 3 years. But according to AAA, around 42% of people think that batteries are basically guaranteed to last up to 5 years. We never actually thought about it, but the truth is, battery actually last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. With fewer lasting longer than that, that number can also vary a lot depending on your driving habits and your climate in which you live. In short, batteries aren't going to make it to that 5 year mark, and you should probably budget for the day when the battery finally dies. And it says here when you leave your radio on, probably while you're out washing your car, and then you go to get it and it won't crank. Generally, what I see with batteries nowadays, and what I have been doing over the past few years with the start stop technology as an exception, since this car that I have now will require that I do the AGM or it's some other, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's one of those batteries designed for start stop technology that I've been buying the Walmart cheap $59 battery and have been getting just as good a service with them as I have with anything else. I did come to find that those batteries are made by Johnson Controls in Mexico, and their Johnson Controls batteries come in Mercedes Benz. Seen that with my own eyes. So, you know, save you some money, buy the cheapest battery you can with the best warranty you can, and just move on with life because battery's not going to last more than about 3 years. Generally, what I tell people is at 3 year mark, test your battery. If it tests okay at 3 years, run it to four. Fourth year, don't look at it, don't test it, just pull it out and put another battery in. But I say pull it out, and you can attest to this, Gramps. The some of these new vehicles, you can't just snatch the battery out and throw another one in. It will require, because the computer, the engine PCM, actually accounts for a degrading a battery that is going down, degrading, and changes the charge algorithm from the alternator. So you have to go in and program the computer and tell it on some models of cars that it has a new battery so that it will change the way it charges it. Have you run into any of that? Or I know you, I think you've read some of that.
Yeah, I'm not. Bill ran across a problem with one that he changed the battery, and it was only a Toyota RAV4, I believe, about 2020 model or something like that, 2019. The power door locks wouldn't work anymore. The windows wouldn't go up and down. The back hatch wouldn't open with the remote. They had to take it to the dealer to get him to reprogram it because he put all he did was put a battery in.
Yeah,
But he's used to taking them out and putting them in, and he didn't realize that you need to keep that memory alive with one of those little battery pack things to put in the cigarette lighter. He lost all
right.
that knowledge. He's run across that I think 2 times.
And how much did he was he able to tell you how much it costs for the dealer to reprogram that? Probably an hour labor, I'd
An
imagine.
hour. They charge him an hour. It's around a
And it,
$100.
you're right, 100. It's going to be 100 to $150 depending on what dealer you go to and who has access to the technology to do it. Some of these aftermarket scanners can do it, and some of them can't. Some of this stuff has to go back to the dealer. I know that's certainly that way with Mercedes. So let's see what else we got. We got a couple more slides. Let's see. Let's a couple more. Oh, and this one I got. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to tell a story at the end of this one. Car needs to be warmed up before driving in cold temperatures, and you be thinking about that one. I think you'll know what story I'm going to have you tell on this one. This is a pretty pervasive myth, and oh, did I actually skip? Yeah, I skipped. It's pretty pervasive myth, and it actually has a little fun little history. This myth is that you need to let your car idle and warm up before driving it, particularly if it's cold outside. It's actually true. Once upon a time, when vehicles were carbureted, if you didn't let your car warm up back in the day, it might stall out while you were driving down the road. However, modern fuel injected engines did away with that need. It's perfectly fine to drive your car as soon as you crank it in the cold, unless, of course, you want to wait to run the heater first. I will say this. I'm going to say it's temperatures where you're at drop into the teens and you're in an area like we are that we're we're not accustomed to that. Um, I don't know what kind of oil viscosities they're running in some of these northern climates. Uh, I would say you probably need to run your engine probably at least 2 minutes or so to let it warm up a little bit to make sure and allow for good oil circulation. Um, but I remember you equating us, or not equating, telling me a story about what your dad used to have to do in the wintertime to get a car going. Uh, you remember what you told me? I
Yeah,
know what you
back then they just used HD30. It was the brand
heavy
old. I
duty
mean,
30.
yeah, that's what they used. And on a really cold, freezing day, it, the oil would be so thick he couldn't get it to. The car would just barely turn over, and mostly because of the oil. So he'd build a fire under the oil pan with some start out with some bags and then throw some little twigs on there and get a fire going and let the oil warm up and then he could crank up.
Oh, can you imagine that today?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, another thing he had to do, and I thought about it today because we've had such heavy dew, fog. We've been having a lot of fog, and it
yeah.
wets everything. Everything on the hood gets wet with the fog. And if we had heavy fog, he'd have to roll up a lunch bag, tear a lunch bag, and roll it up and set it on fire and go out there and run it back and forth up and down the plug wires to dry the plug wires out before it would crank. So they've come a little ways with the computers.
Oh man.
Seen him
Uh,
do that. I seen him do that a lot in the wintertime when it was heavy dew, and then we get those cold snaps. All right,
oh
building the fire.
well, it has been so dry here. They're talking. I think we've had a half-inch rain in the last 30 days. We've had no rain to speak of here, and it is horribly dry. Wildfires is we major no burn ban at all. And they're trying to get people to stop throwing cigarettes out the window because they've had some terrible fires down the road from here. So yeah, don't
Yeah,
throw
it's
your
pretty.
cigarettes out.
We're in a drought too, so pretty dry.
It's very
May
dry.
we thought we were gonna have some rain this week, but I don't think it's coming. I think it's gonna miss us. Still got,
Well,
but
still got what?
I had a malfunction junction there.
Brain cramp.
Didn't
Yeah,
it didn't yeah didn't connect the thoughts.
yeah, that's all right. We're gonna move on. And one of the things that you had talked to me about, I don't know, recently. We'll just throw this up here, and I'll slide over here where I can scroll it. Is Hertz? You can see, everybody's seen the commercials for Hertz and how they're got these big electric plans and commercials for going electric. And well, they didn't totally pull the plug on it, I don't think. But Hertz is they are slowing down. They Hertz pumping the brakes to electrify more of its rental car fleet after EV repair costs came in higher than company anticipated, and after Tesla price cuts reduced the resale value of the majority of the electric vehicles in its fleet by about a third. So some of the electrification at Hertz rental car is not necessarily going to be going through as they had originally anticipated. Um, let's see. Hertz disclosed on Thursday. I'm not sure when this article came out. Let's see. This was October the 26th of 2023. So it's pretty recent. Hertz disclosed on Thursday that about 80% of its battery electric cars in its fleet are Teslas today, and about 11% of Hertz's entire fleet is comprised of electric cars now, with around 50,000 electric cars in its fleet currently. That means Hertz has around 35,000 Teslas in its fleet. That number is far shy of the 100,000 Teslas electric cars Hertz originally said it was ordering from Tesla by the end of 2022. Um, This is Hertz Global Chief Executive Officer Stephen Shearer said Hertz is still committed to buy 100,000 cars from Tesla with 175,000 EVs from GM, but but is not on target to have EV represent a quarter of its fleet by the end of 2024 as previously hoped. So, what is one of the problems that you're seeing or that you're reading about with the EVs as they currently stand?
Uh, well, they haven't. What I was trying to figure out from Hertz is if they got that many vehicles in their fleet, at some point Tesla's going to have to release some of that information. They don't want people other than themselves to work on it. Somebody's going to have to be able to work on it. You got rental cars all over the United States. One of them tears up. You're going to have to ship it somewhere to get it fixed. You know,
Right, because I mean, you're going to have a 4,000 pound brick sitting there that you can't do anything with if nobody can work on it.
well, if
And
I was going to do that, if I were Hertz and I were going to do that, I'd look at GM or Ford, somebody that's got a local dealer that works on it, no matter
uh,
where it is.
well, you and I have both talked about this. If I was in Hertz's shoes, I would be looking at the Toyota hybrid
Yeah.
really hard because they've been in the business. Since, when did the Prius first come out? Was it 2004?
Well,
Um,
your cousin bought one of the first ones.
right. And I
Mhm.
remember when me and you went to the store, we had gotten in a family gathering, and she said, "Here, just take my car." And how we were in 2004, we were like, "Wow," riding along on the electric. And if you needed to go a little faster, you just stepped down on the gas, and it seamlessly accelerated and you know went on gas engine. But go ahead, yeah.
I was just,
Finish telling that story though about where that car is probably still today. We'd have to verify it, but
oh, I don't know. It went to one of her um, grandkids, and he wrote it hard and put it up wet. But she called me one time. They were they live in North Carolina. They were going to drive to California, and I think it was around 100,000 miles. Took it in to get. They always took it to the dealer to get it serviced. Took it into the dealer, and the dealer told them, "Well, you really need to put a battery in it." And she called me and asked me what I thought about it. And I said, I troop right on out to California and not worry about it. And
right.
she went out there, and I don't know. They drove. I think they kept it like maybe 2009.
Well, that new one they have is well. I thought that new one was a 2018. Did they
It's
not keep
18
it
or
that long?
19, but they had a couple in between. Like they
Oh,
get
okay.
they trade cars about every 5 years. You get. But the grandson wound up with that one, and I think the last time I heard anything about the car that I remember, it had 250. Sorry, I had a cough. But
No problem.
anyway, had about 250,000 miles, and it was still going the same with the original battery in it. So
And that was 2004, and here we are in 2023.
yeah,
So you know, and the dealer's been told her, and that was way back when, that it needed a $5,000 battery, and it's just kept on soldiering on. Um,
yeah,
so Toyota has that the battery stuff figured out. So that was the whole point in that was that Toyota with the hybrids makes much more sense than trying to go strictly all EV. And which brings me to another subject that I was going to talk about, and let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Let's click on this. That. I think this is it here. Nope. I know what I need to do. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I am learning this stuff. Gramp, step away there and go ahead and get his throat cleared up, and we will work on sharing the next screen with you guys and some stuff that we had found. Um, everybody's favorite thing to kick is California, and California. I don't want to kick them, but I just want to ask you, what are you thinking? California can't power the state, but is forging ahead with electric truck mandate, um, and they've got these two wonderful Tesla 18 wheelers sitting up here. And if you've been on YouTube and watch any of Jay Leno's Garage, I think Jay Leno recently did a test drive on one of these, showing how they perform and all that. I have not had an opportunity to sit down and watch that video. I just saw where it had come out. But main thing here is I wanted to point out is California is rich in natural resources, which once powered the state. Natural gas deposits in the Monterey Shale Formation, geothermal energy, abundant rivers, waterways, San Joaquin Valley, River Delta, and hydroelectric dams. Pacific coastline, 85 million acres of wildlands, and 17 million of those used for commercial timberlands, mines, and mineral resources. Let's read down here. Despite in this abundance, in June 2020, the California Air Resource Board, or CARB, approved regulations to require automakers to sell more electric commercial trucks, with the ultimate goal of all new trucks uh, in, sold in rather state to be zero emissions by 2045. Yeah, there you're back. Good to see you back. Uh, Had to get you a sip of water there. I understand. We've been talking for about 45 minutes, but main thing there is California wanting to go to these electric trucks, all electric and all electric vehicles. And did they say it was? Did they say by 2035 they wanted to be all electric? No more ICE vehicles sold in California. I
Not
can't
gonna be
remember the.
not gonna be sold. They're not gonna take them all off the road. But if you wanted to buy an ICE vehicle and after 2035, you're not gonna be able to. You won't be able to get it registered in California. So I guess if it means if anybody lost their mind and moved to California, they'd have to buy an electric vehicle.
Uh, yeah, even if so, does that so what you're telling me is even if say they came here to Mississippi, or say decide they bought a new car here in Mississippi in 2036, and then decided they got transferred and moved to California, they could not take that vehicle and register it in the state of California.
That's my understanding. Once after 2035, you can't even register them. That's what the plan is right now. If I think, well, I don't know how that's going to work out for anybody that does that. You know, any state that does that. But I guess if they all do it, then what choice do you have? Except
If you're going to live there, you're going to have to buy an older vehicle and rehab it and just keep going with it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
You watch some of Uncle Tony's stuff, and that's a video he did the other day. Was he was talking about buying older vehicles to rehab to use for your daily drivers, and I can see where that would be a viable solution to the problem for a while. Um, the problem I'm seeing with even doing that is part supply.
Yeah. They're going to quit making parts for them.
Eventually, yeah.
Unless it's a 55 or
I
57 Chevrolet.
Right. And DD Speed Shop, he's going to be able to ride on into, the 2070s. He's going to be going for a while. But I have actually stockpiled a few parts, just simple stuff like oil filters, air filters, and stuff such as that for like my little work truck. It's a '97 Nissan pickup truck. I'm going to probably be looking at doing that for this Toyota Corolla. Um, Trying to put away a few parts just to keep being able to keep going down the road. Um, you have you been keeping up with this strike and any of that stuff at all?
Uh, Not much, but I know it put them behind on some of their stuff. But the only one I think GM's on, I think they got a tentative contract with Stellantis. They got one for Ford, and then GM hadn't come around yet.
Well, I, from from the we've already had issues getting parts. Before I
Mm-hmm.
left FedEx, it was hurry up and wait. From Ford, it was hurry up and wait. We needed a seatbelt. Uh, it wasn't available. And this was prior to the strike. They were talking about the strike leading up to my end time there with FedEx, but we had problems getting transmission cooler lines for 2019 model vehicles. These weren't old vehicles. Now the Ford van, okay, maybe because it was a 2006, that could have been a problem that there wouldn't be a lot of supply for a seatbelt. But what I'm seeing on parts is even with the like I said, the 2019 vehicle, and you go to order a part, well, it's on national back order and it hasn't been released. I don't think we've begun to see the fallout from what this strike is going to cause as far as parts for new vehicles. Um, and I think we're going to start seeing it in the next, 2 or 3 months. By the first of the year, even if they get this strike resolved, there's going to be parts problems.
Where are you running across that on that older vehicle you're working on for your personal vehicle?
Which one? Which one is that? Oh, with the Corolla.
Yeah, the timing gear.
And it actually shipped. I got a notification it did ship Friday, and I'm supposed to have it Monday, so I hopefully can put it back together.
If you get the
So,
right one, if you get the
I
right part.
oh please don't put that mojo on me. Yeah, I hope it is the right one. I looked it up by part number, and
I'm talking about you probably ordered the right one, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if you didn't get the right one,
well,
because
if I didn't get the right,
Bill runs across that all every day. In that shop, in his shop, he has a. They'll send something over and it's, uh, not even close to being right. You have to wait another day to get a part. It just messes up his business.
oh, right. Well, I mean, how bad would it mess up your business if you had something on the on the lift, and then you've got to try to drag the vehicle back off the lift so you can get another vehicle? And it's a total goat roping. Um, well, like I said, I fully expect it to cause big problems. Um, I was talking with one of my coworkers the other day, and he was throwing his hands up. He was all aggravated. And he said, "Man, they have just overcomplicated this stuff. They've just made it to where it's no fun to work on." And he was just going on and on. I'm like, "Yeah." I went to him later. I said, "Man," I said, "I get what you're saying. The technology. I mean, all the stuff that we enjoy on these cars with being able to plug my phone in, I stream Spotify and I listen to the music I want to listen to. And we're riding down the road and I'm on cruise control and I'm getting too close to the car in front of me and it automatically brakes, and then a car pulls off and then the car it will automatically accelerate. I've demonstrated all the safety features on this 21 Highlander, and all those things are nice and neat and cool and all that stuff. But I'm gonna tell you what, when you have to start working on those systems and delving into what makes them tick, as a mechanic, it'll make you pull your hair out. You can see it. You see, I ain't got any left. You know, I see yours is receded pretty well through the years too. So, Well, we have gotten pretty close to an hour. I want to thank everybody that came by and visited with us today. And if you're catching us on the replay, go down there and leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up. Um, I don't know when we're going to do this again. I want to make this a regular thing. We've got to come up with some more topics, and certainly have enjoyed my time here with Gramps. You got any final words before we slide out of here, Gramps?
No, just keep between the ditches and the shiny side up.
Amen to that. So, all righty, everybody. Thanks for coming by the Real World Garage. We'll catch you on the flip.
Bye.
Later.